Students, now in the anatomy of the spinal cord, the third video, I am going to tell you about the formation of the nerve plexus. I will try to give explanation for the question that why the nerve plexus are formed and why the nerve plexus are formed only in the cervical and lumbosacral region. And then I will also tell you why the nerve plexus which are formed in the cervical and that of the lumbosacral plexus, they are formed by the unions of the ventral ramus only. Why the dorsal ramus are not forming the nerve plexus. Okay, and then I will also try to answer to the query that why there are no nerve plexus between the thoracic second spinal segment to the thoracic 12th spinal segment. Okay, so this is going to be a short video onto the nerve plexus. Let us move to the next slide. Now, why nerve plexus are formed in cervical and lumbosacral region but not in the thoracic region? Let us see this first diagram. This is a diagram from the thoracic part of the spinal cord, okay, and where this anterior horn cells, okay, present into the anterior gray column, okay, they are few and arranged into the medial and lateral divisions, okay, and they give rise to the intercostal nerve between T2 to the T12, which goes and form a typical spinal nerve which supply the dorsal through the dorsal ramus, the skin and muscles present onto the dorsal aspect. Then this also supply the skin and the muscles, okay, joints and tendons which are present onto the anterior or ventral and lateral aspect of the body, okay, and they are from the T2 to the T12, okay, to the intercostal spaces, muscles present in intercostal spaces. And these now, the spinal nerve, okay, arising from segment T2 to T12, they don't form any nerve plexus. The reason is that body in the thoracic region is perfectly segmented. Okay, it doesn't show any other appendages except the proper segmentation. If you trace the evolution and lower segmented animals, if you will see, they have the perfect segmentation. That means they have their own muscles and their own nerves in a particular segment of the body, and that segmentation of the lower animal, okay, is preserved in the human being only in the thoracic region. If you see the evolution, then there occurs the formation of the limbs, okay, appendages, and these limbs, and in lower animals it may be in the form of the wings also in the birds, okay. This in human being has evolution has occurred in the form of the upper limb and the lower limb, okay, upper limb. And because of the formation of the upper limb and lower limb, this part of the spinal segments, that is from C1 to the T1 region, it gives origin to the cervical and to the brachial plexus, because this has to supply the upper limb muscles which have started migrating from the central regions towards the periphery in the limbs, okay. And we will see later in the next slide that while they are migrating, they are carrying their nerve supply with each other from particular spinal segment to the particular myotomes, okay, myotomes. But if we see here the spinal cord transverse section from a limb musculature, either upper limb or the lower limb, not musculature, spinal cord, which is innervating to the upper limb or the lower limb through formation of the brachial plexus, we will note that there are so many groups present in this spinal cord in the anterior gray column. Okay, anterior motor neurons. Okay, they are gamma and alpha motor neurons are there, and they supply to the muscles of the limbs. Okay, and they are classified from medial to lateral as it is from proximal to the distal segment of the upper limb. That means the medial segment of the motor neuron, they will supply to that of the axial musculature both on ventral and dorsal aspect, that means flexor and extensor. Similarly, flexor and extensor of the shoulder region or the hip regions will be supplied. Then it will be the limb region, that is upper limb or thigh, then forearm or the leg, and lastly the hand and or the foot muscles are there, and these groups are again subdivided into the flexor group and the extensor group muscles. Okay, so they have the large number of motor neurons, and so many nerve fibers will arise from a single spinal segment to go to the various muscles. Okay, various muscles. That is the difference. Okay, that is the difference, that in the limb enlargement, okay, I mean so the spinal cord supplying to the limbs, okay, there are the formation of the brachial plexus, I mean say the formation of the brachial plexus, the lumbosacral plexus, the cervical plexus is seen, but not in the case of the thoracic region. Intercostal muscles for which have a I mean to say segmental supply. Okay, segmental. That means a spinal segment supplies to the intercostal muscle in a particular intercostal space. Okay, or which have derived from a single myotome. Let us see this explanation further in the next slide. Now this is an embryological development of the limb muscle in the limb bird, okay, at the 7th week of intrauterine life. You can see here this is the spinal cord in the vertebral canal with the anterior root or the ventral root, and this is the dorsal root. Dorsal root ganglion is here. This is the trunk, and then the trunk divides into the dorsal ramus, and this is the ventral ramus. Okay, now you will see that the dorsal ramus goes and supply to the muscle and skin of the back side. Okay, of the back side, and here are the muscles which are of the body wall, and then these are the muscles which are called as hip axial muscles. Okay, and these hip axial muscles, they are extensors and flexors, and they will go and just supply, I mean say will take their position in the limb, into the various parts of the limb, that is the forearm, the arm, the hand, like that. And this limb extensor and flexor muscles, they will migrate to a great distance from the central region. Okay, so in limbs, the muscles which are supplied by a single spinal segment, they belong to one myotomes. Okay, as you have seen that. Okay, ultimately the muscles and nerves, they correspond in their segmentation. Okay, spinal segmentation correspond to the myotomic segmentation because of the formation of the somaite. Okay, in which one myotome is there. Okay, in which on the right side and to the left side. So in the limbs, myotomes of the adjacent segment, they start migrating. Say for example, if we take the formation of the brachial plexus, which will supply the limb bud, upper limb bud, we will see that this myotomes right from C5 spinal segment, C6, C7, C8 and T1, they are migrating. Okay, the myotomic muscles from these many segments, they are migrating to form the musculature of the upper limb, and while they are migrating, they carry their original nerve with them. That means C5 myotome was supplied by C5 spinal nerve, okay, ventral rami, okay, not the dorsal, because it is the hypaxial musculatures which are supplied by the ventral rami, only they migrate into the limbs, not that of the epiaxial or the back musculature which are supplied by the dorsal primary ramus. Okay, and this is all a important reason why the plexus are not formed in the dorsal primary ramus, because they are some muscles which are not migrating anywhere. They are present in the that particular segment of here, but the hypaxial musculature or the limb musculature from adjacent myotomic segment, they migrate to form the limb musculature. So it is only those muscles which are supplied by the ventral rami in the limb, they form the plexus. Okay, they form the plexus because they supply to that of the adjacent muscles. Okay, adjacent myotomic muscle, that's why they form the muscle. So it is important to understand that when myotomes are migrating into the limb musculature, they are carrying their nerve supply with them. Okay, they are to a distant places, and this myotomes in the limbs, they fuse with each other while they are migrating. Okay. Mm. And they fuse with each other, that means adjacent myotome they fuse, that means which this adjacent myotome will be supplied by the adjacent spinal segment. Okay, the nerves arising from the ventral rami arising from the adjacent I mean to say spinal segment. So there are two conditions. Number one, that each myotome is supplied by individual ventral rami, but while they are migrating, they start fusing with the in the adjacent musculature. They start fusing with each other. Okay, fusing with each other, and then they have to go to a long distance. They have to go. They have to migrate. This is two important reason why the plexus are formed, why the nerve plexus are formed, and this explain also why the dorsal rami, they don't form the uh, uh, this nerve plexus, only it is the ventral rami, okay, which are forming the plexus. A muscle may be innervated by axons of few adjacent spinal segments, as I said. Okay, say for example, this is one muscle, skeletal muscle, this is another, and there is a third muscle also here, which is so these are the three muscles, and with the color there, see their origin of the nerve, that means nerve which are supplying to these muscles, they are taking origin from adjacent spinal segment. For say for example, this muscle is supplied by the three adjacent spinal segment, and from this the axons are taking origin from the neurons which are arranged into one single vertical column which is extending in three adjacent spinal segment, and then the three spinal segment, I means they are taking origin from three ventral rami, adjacent ventral rami, and ultimately since it has to go to a single muscle here which has formed by the fusion of the three myotomes, which is formed embryologically by fusion, hence it will have to be supplied by the three, I mean to say, rami, ventral rami, and that is the reason why these three rami will try to come close to each other so that they can easily supply to a muscle. So though they are taking origin from adjacent spinal segment, they are trying to come, and in this attempt to come close to each other to supply a single muscle derived from the adjacent myotome, okay, the nerve plexus are formed. See here, this blue color column is here, and here only two adjacent segment of this are giving origin and supplying to this muscle. Okay, similarly here and another adjacent segment is shown here. So all these muscles which are ventral root, okay, which are taking origin from ventral root, ultimately are going through the ventral rami here. Okay, they will just, I mean say, divide, redivide and reunite again, and then in this a network of the nerve plexus is formed, what is called as the cervical, brachial or lumbosacral plexus. So what is this? This is nothing but formation of a network of the nerve fibers where the reorganization of the adjacent neurons, okay, I mean say the axons derived from that particular segmental neuron takes place, okay. So they may go to the adjacent, I mean say the muscles which were ultimately formed by the fusion of the adjacent myotome, and when they are migrating they will take these nerve fibers along with them, okay, along with that. This diagram also explains that a particular muscle which has a particular function may be supplied by the adjacent, I mean say spinal segment, but these spinals, no, I mean say neurons, I mean say these axons of this now are coming from the neurons which are located in the adjacent spinal segment, okay, which has the same function, okay, same function. So it is the reorganization of the nerve fibers which ultimately has the same to supply the muscle which has the same function. Say for example this muscle may be flexor, the same here the other muscle may be extensor, this muscle may be abductor, and that's why this so many type of the columns are seen which are collection of the motor neuron. Functional groupism is there, okay, they are called as the nuclear column, okay. From this nuclear column, as I have shown you in the one of the diagram which gives origin to the plexus, the big mass of the anterior gray column, there were so many nuclei were arranged of motor neuron which were further classified into a dorsal and ventral, that means for flexor and extensor muscles, okay. And this is another, I mean to say, reason why plexus are formed. This is the reorganization of the function, okay, to a particular muscles, okay. So the nerve fibers, they try to reorganize themselves also as extensor, motor, I mean say extensor, flexor, like that. Now the contact of the nerve with the developing muscle is necessary. This is another aspect. See here, this shows the brachial plexus from C5 to T1, okay. This you can see that this ventral rami, they will divide into dorsal and ventral divisions, okay. Anterior and posterior division, anterior division will unite, then posterior division of this nerves will divide, unite, and in this way a network of the nerve fibers are seen here, okay. That is the brachial plexus is here, okay. So the contact of the nerve with the developing muscle is necessary unless and until that the terminal end of this motor nerve fibers, okay, which is taking origin from the anterior gray column, will not touch to the muscle to which it is designed, okay. The muscle will not develop, okay. So it is developing muscle is necessary to differentiate that functionally. Thus a muscle only after its contact or forming the motor nerve plate or motor end plate, okay, will form the function, will acquire its function, whether it is flexor or extensor, abductor or adductor. So the contact between the, I mean to say, nerve terminal, that is axon terminal, okay, at the motor end plate with the muscle is necessary to differentiate it with the function, okay, its function, or to define its function. So the formation of the nerve plexus is an functional adaptation. So what is, why nerve plexus are formed? It is a functional adaptation due to fusion of myotome. As I said that while embryologically development in limb body is taking place, the myotomes means adjacent muscle mass, they are migrating and they are fusing, okay, they are fusing, and while they are doing so they are carrying their nerve also with them, and a contact with the nerve and muscle is necessary to acquire the, I mean to say, to acquire its function, whether it is I mean to say flexor, extensor, abductor or adductor. I hope that I have given some of the idea why nerve plexus are formed, why only ventral rami are responsible for formation of nerve plexus, why not the dorsal rami, okay, dorsal rami. Thank you very much for watching this video.